Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience presented by DraftKings 2021 Fantasy Football Draft Recap. Results and places where Pat went wrong with his picks, because it's evident pretty early what I did wrong, and then I had to adjust in real time. Well, not real time because this was a slow draft, but I just wanted to let everyone know that if you want the best stats, the best tools in the business to do all your research for free, you can use the Advanced Stats Hub at runthesims.com. A full breakdown starting on August the 23rd up on Mayo Media Network. We'll have a walkthrough for all the free and premium tools at runthesims.com, but you'll have a full free 7-day trial once you buy the season package. If you want to cancel, then hey, cancel. No hard feelings about that, but runthesims.com/Mayo will get you a discount on the premium tools such as the DFS optimizer, the showdown optimizer, all of the betting tools, the comparison tools, and the thing that the entire site is powered on, the custom game simulator, where you can go into each game, simulate them up to 10,000 times and get the results. And you can see the downside, the median, and the upside, and the range of outcomes for a lot of these players when comparing them together. The season-long tool is completely free. You just put in your email, no credit card, any shit like that, and you're good to go at runthesims.com. So please check it out. Remember to smash the like button to this episode, subscribe to Mayo Media Network, obviously, and the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast, wherever you download podcasts. Rating and review, if you're feeling generous, out there as well. But in the comment section, I want to know, what's your ideal start in a football draft this year? Picks 1 and 2, the first 2-round ideal start. That means, where do you want to draft from, and what are the 2 players that you would like to take? Because I had that going into this draft, and you'll see how it blew up in my fucking face. I was actually live with Joe Pizzapia last week when I was doing the updated content for the rankings. All of my rankings are updated to this moment, by the way. Hit the description and you can find all of the hyperlinks down there to get quick access to the updated rankings and all of the tiered ranking shows. And if you just stay on Mayo Media Network, we have brand new content every single day. I hope you're enjoying all of the content, by the way. I'm all energized for fantasy football season. That'll last till like middle of October, and I'll be like, man, there's 3 months to go. But right now, I am feeling fired up for some football. I hope you are as well. And I was fired up to do this draft, but there's a bit of weird stuff with this draft. So I actually just want to jump into it right away. We'll get to round 1 and check out the results here. It is a 12-team industry league draft, the fantasy league of experts, and somehow I got included with this because I won it one time. This is the series of tournaments that Jake Seeley always puts up. I always tell him, like, I have no time to draft this. He's like, you want to be in best ball this year? I was like, yeah, why not? I still drafted like a season-long team because it was a slow email draft, and here's the little thing about industry league drafts. This is why I don't really this is the only one I participate in unless there's like a charity one to go do it. One, most people who provide a ton of content don't have a lot of time to manage extra fantasy leagues. So when you see some of the names in this draft, be assured that this is being siphoned out to intern. I have got a friend to help me run this team and help me do the draft because I couldn't stay on top of it. I made like 5 of these picks when I was on the golf course one day. It was a slow email draft. So not everyone is putting their full foot forward into this. That's why best ball works out for a lot of us who are in this draft, because you just have to do the draft and then that's it for the year. You see who wins in the end, for one thing. And the other thing, because I used to do this when I first started in fantasy, I know a lot of people are doing this right now, because I thought when I first broke in, it's like, oh my God, if I could win one of these industry leagues, everyone's going to think I'm the best. And then so I played in as many as possible, and I won a few, and it turns out no one gave a shit. And when I say that is that no one in the public gave a shit, and then no one in the leagues also gave a shit. The move actually is, if you're trying to break into the fantasy football industry, and you can get a lot of invites to these quote-unquote expert leagues or industry league drafts, is to join as many as possible, see how it's going through 4 weeks. After 4 weeks, like check out of the ones you're not 4-0 in or 3-1 in, and then just like start to never update your lineup or anything like that, because that's what everyone else does. And it almost kind of works in a weird way where, you know, Pat will compete with one other person for this league, and then I'm out of another league, so 2 other people compete for their championship, and then at the end of the year, everyone can have their championships and boast and brag. It's really not that big of a deal. So I don't take it too seriously, and I know that most of the people in this draft don't take it super seriously as well. It's fun to draft with these guys and talk shit back and forth throughout the year. It's a great way to stay in touch. That's why we thought that best ball was the best way to go for these 12 people in particular, just so we can shit talk each other and, you know, see who wins at the end. It's only based on the draft. But that's sort of the dirty little secret about industry leagues. If you didn't know, or you take them super seriously if you're just breaking in, don't. They're fun to play, and it's a great way to make contacts and do everything like that, but it's not the most important thing in the world. I would prefer to focus on, like, instead of doing my waivers for this league, I have like my high stakes home league that I would just much rather focus on because I win lots of money if I win it. I'd rather focus on my bets or my DraftKings lineups because I have real money on that one. These ones, it's like $15 to play. Don't worry about it, all right? So it's just kind of fun. But I did use it as practice to see how I did everything right or wrong. That's what I kind of want to assess at the moment. So round one goes like this. Ray Flowers took Christian McCaffrey first overall. Adam Azer took Dalvin Cook second. This full point PPR 12-team league, by the way. Steve Gallo took Alvin Kamara. Pat Thorman took Zeke Elliott. Matthew Berry took Derrick Henry. Those guys are 1 through 5 on my rankings list. So didn't get any of those guys. I picked 6 and I took Travis Kelce. Mainly because I wanted to see what a draft is with Travis Kelce. But like I said to you guys in the comment section, what is the optimal way you can draft? Pick 6 is like the worst pick for me. Because I don't mind taking Kelce in the first round. The issue with pick 6 is that you don't pick again until pick number 19. And there was one guy in particular I really wanted in the second round. And I knew that in order to get Kelce, I could have picked 9 and probably get Kelce. So if I had given myself 3 picks later on the back end the other way, I would have got the guy I wanted. So what happened with me in round 1, I take Kelce. I'm good with that. I could have taken Adams. I could have taken Ridley or Diggs, or I don't have the other running backs elevated. In fact, the running back that I have next, if you go and look at my rankings, is actually Najee Harris, who I was hoping I would get in the second round. That would be my ideal start, going Kelce and Harris. I just didn't want to miss out on having a solid running back, which is, spoiler alert, is what happened. So then I had to instantly ship into 0 RB mode. Now, the one saving grace about this league in flex is you have to play 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, then you have 4 flex spots. So each position, and you have to start a tight end. So tight end actually means a ton here. And running back or wide receiver can be mitigated in its impact, just knowing your scoring system based on the construct of the league. Like, I feel much better overloading my team. Listen, I'm going to need to have 2 good running backs. That's what's going to happen, and I don't. So I need to piece that together, and hopefully I can hit on 1 or 2 guys and get like average output from those guys. I'm not winning the running back category, but I can win the receivers category now. I can win tight end. I could potentially, with mix and matching my upside at quarterback, be competitive there too. But the rest of the flex spots, I just kept going on wide receivers at that point because I could technically play 6 of them during the course of the week if I really wanted to, and only 2 running backs. And where it's best ball, it will scrape your best ones. And if we're talking about like down the bench players in best ball, receivers just have higher upside, especially crappy receivers on a week-to-week basis. And where there is no start and there is no sit, and I don't have to make those roster decisions, then I can really overload. So I do think that 0 RB isn't like preferable to me. I would rather have a stud running back in the first or second round, obviously. But that's just not the way it worked out. And the one thing that I didn't want to do was be like, oh my God, I'm in round 3. I have no running back. I have to take one of these guys that I just don't like and don't want to take that early, like David Montgomery. Like, fuck it, I'll take Terry McLaurin instead. Like, I just think that he's a better player. I think that he will score more fantasy points. I think that his upside week to week is going to be higher, where, I mean, maybe I'm just wrong about David Montgomery and like that type of quarterback, whether it be a running back, whether it be Dobbins, whether it be DeAndre Swift, even Antonio Gibson, who I'm a bit more down on than everyone else is. And he went the first pick of the second round in this one, so he didn't even get a chance to make it to me. But that's just not a tier of running back I love. I'd rather go down to the Damian Harrises of the world, the Myles Gaskin, who I'm not super in love with, the Raheem Mostert, like your low 20s type running back who can be very solid, and where I don't have to start or sit them because of best ball. I feel like I can piece together 2 running backs per week that way, and then just overwhelm the rest of the league with wide receiver. Based on what happened the first 2 rounds in my draft, I had to readjust that. So let's jump back over to the first round and finish it up. Nando, my guy, my former boss, one of my best buds, took Tyreek Hill at number 7, first receiver off the board. Aaron Jones went number 8 to Scott Fish. Bob Harris takes Devontae Adams at number 9. Pat Fitzmaurice takes Saquon at number 10. Jody Smith, Jonathan Taylor at number 11. Then Mike Hollywood Clay goes back-to-back with Nick Chubb and Antonio Gibson at picks 12 and 13. That's about the order in which a lot of these guys are going in standard redraft leagues as well. So that's round 1. There's nothing really outrageous here, like Hill going over Adams. I would take Adams over Hill. I would go Harris over Jones and Barkley and Taylor and Chubb and Gibson and Eckler objectively. However, knowing where these guys are actually going in drafts, you could, if you were at the back end and let's say you had pick number 10, like Pat did, and he takes Barkley, like you could easily follow that up with Najee Harris, who just was my target in the second round. In fact, I had three targets, 2 priority targets and a secondary target. It was funny in real time when I was talking through with Joe on the show, they went the 3 picks before my pick and really left me in the shithole for who I wanted in round 2. So round 2, I took DeAndre Hopkins, who I didn't really want. I like DeAndre Hopkins enough. Like he's sort of on this tier and all the guys who went after receiver-wise after me. So I had pick number 19, pick 207, and it went Hopkins, Metcalf, A.J. Brown, Keenan Allen, Justin Jefferson, Darren Waller to end the second round. Like I have all of those guys on a tier together with themselves, along with Allen Robinson and Terry McLaurin are the other 2 guys that I personally have in that tier of receiver. But the problem was I wanted Harris with this pick. So Harris was my number 1 and Calvin Ridley was my number 2 because I have both those guys ranked way higher than apparently everyone else does. I have them as like fringy. I have Harris inside my top 10 overall. If you hit the rankings in my top 150, I have Ridley at number 13, I believe. I really like Ridley this year. I've, in fact, even thought about bumping him up over Diggs just because this knee injury is kind of worrying me a little bit. And when you're at the very elite end, that doesn't mean that I think that Diggs is going to be bad by any means, but just when you're dealing with the very top end of players, it's all about those little personal preferences. If anything scares you at all, like that's when you're coming up with columns for Calvin Ridley and Stefan Diggs, there's not very many. So any little thing has to go into that. If that's, a coin flip for you and what actually decides that. So I still have Diggs ranked above him. I'm starting to lean Ridley, but those are the 4 that I have in my top end tier. I have Adams, I have Hill, I have Diggs, and I have Ridley. Those 4 I think are much better. Not much better, but have a better chance of finishing as the number 1 overall receiver. Other people argue, hey, DeAndre Hopkins should be in that tier. Pat, what are you talking about? You got a good pick here. And you might be right. It's just I'm wishy-washy on the Cardinals offense a little bit week to week. And maybe that's just stupid on my part. I have Hopkins ranked at number 5 in full disclosure. That's why I took him where I did, but I don't have as much confidence in him being elite every single week like I do with those other guys. And it's mainly based on volume, where I know the volume was there for him. They just have a lot of options. And if they continue to run at the pace that they do, it's probably not going to be an issue. But if they do slow it down a little bit, or they use Rondell Moore a little bit, or Kyler Murray gets back to running the way that he was supposed to, and they increase their offense, and AJ Green turns out not to be like an absolute corpse, and he takes away some targets, that I can envision a scenario where there are some weeks where they're just like, hey, DeAndre Hopkins is double covered. These guys are open. Let's throw to them. That's sort of the fear with it all, because he's so good that it becomes somewhat problematic in that regard. So the entire second round, looking at it, I had mentioned Mike Clay, first pick, took Antonio Gibson. So it was Gibson, Eckler, Diggs, Najee Harris, Joe Mixon, Calvin Ridley, me with DeAndre Hopkins, Metcalf, Brown, Allen, Jefferson, and Waller. If you are listening to the audio version of this show, you can tune into the video version up on Mayo Media Network, and I have the draft results up on the screen. I also have the draft results in the description of both if you want to follow along. Probably should have said that off the top. Now, there is a chance I did say that off the top, and I just don't remember at this point. However, I'm telling you right now, it's down there if you want to go follow along to see how these dummy experts draft and how you're probably better than drafting than they are at this point. Fun fact, again, about analysts in the fantasy football industry. You don't actually have to be good at fantasy football. You just have to be good at talking about fantasy football. That's the hard part about it. The analysis is way different than the practicality of it all. Even look at when I was at FTN, Two Gun. A very high stakes player, not the greatest content provider in the world, but the guy wins fucking money on DraftKings. He has great picks, but he's not like a personality in the fantasy football content space because, he's a very serious player. He spends his time doing his research and making sure that he's playing like $10,000 worth of entries or more every single week. Where Pat's out here, I'm playing like $500 to $1,000 per week on DraftKings and in the betting market, but I'm focused more on my content, trying to articulate different strategies and talking through drafts where I'm wrong about things and how things didn't turn out in my favor as a part of content. So don't ever get that twisted just because someone's a very popular personality on YouTube or it's like Barry on ESPN. Like Matthew Berry is one of the best content providers out there. He's a fantastic writer. He's highly entertaining. I know that he's been around so long, like people are like super negatron towards Barry, but I like him a lot. I like his content a lot. And you have to understand that the audience that he's servicing as well. He's on ESPN. That is about the most casual place. That's for new people to come in, and then they can come out and they can find me, and then people even deeper than me down the list. So it's really weird when you say like analysts, are they really good? Yeah, listen, listen, I'm pretty good at fantasy football. I'm better than 99% of people. But there are certain people that are elevated in this space, and they don't even do content because they spend all of their time trying to hammer down on winning all the money in fantasy football. I kind of take the reverse. I like doing the content. That's where I enjoy to do. I love talking about it, love trying to break it down. And sometimes I'm not the best, as you can see by this draft. So back to the second round. This is where I have to pivot my strategy. Don't go chasing running backs just because you don't have any. Continue to take best player possible. So the third round goes like this: Allen Robinson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, David Montgomery, George Kittle Timbers, Chris Carson, Terry McLaurin, Miles Sanders, CeeDee Lamb, J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift, Mike Evans, and Bob Trees, a.k.a. Robert Woods, a.k.a. Robert Woods. Bobby Trees. I actually kind of like that. Bobby Trees. I find it funny. Either way. I take Terry McLaurin here. I have him ranked as a part of that, like I said, the receiver tier above where everyone else was drafted. It came down between Chris Carson and McLaurin for me with my pick, because Chris Carson is the running back I like the most out of these guys, and my rankings reflect that, versus Dobbins, versus Swift, versus David Montgomery, who I've already previously talked about, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That I just thought, let's shoot for upside. Let's dominate the receiver position. If I'm not going to be able to dominate the running back position, the worst thing I can do for my roster right now is take these. And it's not to say that like the Miles Sanders types of the world and everyone like that can't be like an elite running back. The issue then becomes like, if I miss with this pick, now I have like, it's not good for my running back situation either way. And I just don't feel any confidence here. I actually took a running back in the next round as my number one because I thought he had a solid floor. The weird thing about these guys is I think that McLaurin is just the best of all of these players, especially in terms of upside. You can see Scott Fish took CeeDee Lamb, and that was sort of an internal debate. Now, I like McLaurin a lot more than CeeDee Lamb, but I think it's the same concept. You're looking for a guy who can be the number one on his team, have a 30% market share, go to the team in touchdowns. If I go over to runthesims.com right now, again, runthesims.com/Mayo, for a discount, but this tool is free. If you just put in your email, you can sign up for it. It's the projection tool. So if you bump up, let's see, Terry McLaurin, 23% market share. That actually seems low to me. So let's say I change him to a 29% market share. Maybe actually I'll change it to 31%, which is probably the high end and like ceiling that he's going to get. If I just change him from a 23% market share to a 31% market share, all of a sudden he's wide receiver 2 for the season. So if I save my results and then I go into projections by position, go to wide receiver, you can see it goes Devontae Adams, Terry McLaurin. All of a sudden, you can see I've messed around with Jamar Chase because I love Jamar Chase. And these are all a part of what can actually happen to them on these teams. Like, but I'm dealing with the ceiling example of them and not the floor example, but that's how I draft my fantasy football teams, especially now that I have to pivot into zero RB, that I need to take as many receivers that could potentially dominate this year as possible. And I have to think about ceiling because I'm not playing for 7th, I'm playing for 1st. So I need to think about this in terms of ceiling, especially in best ball. So that's why my draft might seem a little bit unconventional. And I am actually a huge proponent of zigging where everyone else zags. Like, no one really seemed to want to do zero RB in this draft. So I think that's when it becomes an advantage. If you're in a draft room with 11 other people who have a zero RB strategy, probably not the best move. To be perfectly honest with you, it's probably best to go running back heavy. There is no one way to win fantasy football. Anyone tells you that is a fucking liar and is trying to sell you something that doesn't work. I'm not trying to sell you anything besides runthesims.com, which is a tool site, which doesn't give you any advice. It allows you to input what you think is going to happen into games. That's what I like to come on here and pitch to my audience is, hey, these are tools that can help you with your process. Do you have a lean on a game or do you want to see something? And there's baseline projections put in there and they're super easy, like you just saw, in order to manipulate to any way that you want, to tell yourself the story of what you want. That I'm very pro. Trying to tell people like this is the only way that you can draft is fucking stupid and it's wrong. So trust me on that. I've won leagues and lost leagues with a lot of different strategies. And sometimes you just pick the best players. How about that? You do that, you're probably going to be fine. And try to hit some guys in like the 10th, 12th round who are good. Yeah, you're going to be dancing all the way to the finals. Don't worry about that. So that's what happened to me in the 3rd round. 4th round, I took Mike Davis, and I'm higher on Mike Davis than I think a lot of people are. I like his floor. Atlanta still has not brought in anyone else to take his job. And until that happens, I kind of got to stick with my initial lean. Like, hey, this is a guy who's going to get, like, I have him right now penciled in at 40% of the market share because I wanted to see what would happen if he only got 40% and Quadre Olson got 21% and Jadeveon Hawkins ended up with 10%. But I don't think that's what's going to happen. I don't think these guys are going to be very involved whatsoever. So we'll keep even Cordell Patterson at 19% seems a bit much. So let's keep Hawkins at 10. Let's bump down. So if we say that Cordell Patterson gets 15% of the rushes on Atlanta, Quadre Olson gets 5%, Jadeveon Hawkins gets 10%. So a combined 30% between all of those players. Seems pretty high, to be perfectly honest with you, but hey, that's what we're going with for the moment. Matt Ryan, a 6% share of those rushes. So that leaves 60% left over for Mike Davis. And let's artificially bump him down to 3.9 yards per carry. He should be over that. And 55% of the rushing touchdowns. I would guess that it's probably going to be higher than that for Mike Davis if he actually is the starter all year and seeing 60%. You'd think that he'd be playing in the red zone. So we can even bump him up a little bit more. Let's bump him up to 60. And we'll bump, Patterson's not getting 16% of the touchdowns. Justin, I don't know what you're up to with this. We'll call it 10% of the touchdowns, and we'll keep Olsen at 19.5%. So again, I don't think this is even in the ceiling. I think this is just something which you could expect when we think through it logically, what happens with Mike Davis. So we run all of this through. I think he actually gets more of a market share than this in the receiving game. So we'll bump him to, let's say, 11%. And I think that keeping him at 3.9 yards per carry is honestly low. I think that he averages more than that, but let's just call it that downside for him. 3.9 yards per carry, 6.3 yards per reception on 11% of the target share, an 84% catch rate, and around 8% of the receiving touchdowns if that happens. I still think that is not near his upside. If that's the median outcome, that's probably higher than the median outcome. This is probably like a 65, 70th percentile outcome for him, but I think that's well within the range. We can make him be way better than this in the projections, but even spitting all of this out, that puts him in full point PPR at 264 PPR points, running back number 16 for the season. So I think as a fourth round pick, as that not being his ceiling, I think is pretty good. So that would actually put him in the range just behind Darrell Henderson, one spot ahead of Antonio Gibson based on how we have this constructed, ahead of players like David Montgomery, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Miles Sanders, and J.K. Dobbins. So if we go back over to the draft, we're going to see I get him at pick number 43. All those other running backs that we just talked about, pick number 34, pick number 33, pick number 29, pick number 27, pick number 26. So I was able to take Terry McLaurin and Mike Davis, who obviously people aren't as high on as I am, at pick number 43, because he's going about 10 picks after that. But I felt like I needed a receiver, and I knew who I wanted in the fifth round to go through this to fulfill the rest of the strategy that I wanted to work out. But I feel like the opportunity cost, he gave me a 2v2, and I can get McLaurin and Mike Davis, and you can get Bob Harris, J.K. Dobbins. Although I kind of like Dobbins a little bit, but J.K. Dobbins and who did he take here? And Javonte Williams. I think I'd take my guys. I feel like I have more upside in that regard just because I have McLaurin. I think he is the best player of that bunch. Am I wrong? Probably. But, you're going to be wrong about things. So the entire fourth round from top to bottom goes. Mike Clay takes Amari Cooper. Darrell Henderson goes. Chris Godwin, Javonte Williams, Kyle Pitts at number 41. Lamar Jackson comes off the board to Nando at 42. I take Mike Davis, Thielen, Lockett, Josh Jacobs, Patrick Mahomes, Deontay Johnson is the entire fourth round. You'll see that Nando took Lamar Jackson first overall at quarterback. Patrick Mahomes actually goes second in this format. I like the moxie. Nando's always out on a limb doing stuff like this, so that's where he ended up going. Into the fifth round, the entire fifth round goes Kyler, DJ Moore, Julio, Cooper Kupp, Josh Allen, Jamar Chase, Odell, TJ Hawkinson, Mark Andrews, Dak Prescott, Kareem Hunt, and then Brandon Ayuk is the entire fifth round. Those are picks, where are we at here? 49 through 50 through 60 in the draft. So obviously, if you've been following my content at all, you know that I love Jamar Chase. I'm actively trying to get Jamar Chase. Joe Burrow is still going late. And in best ball, I am just stacking these guys up together. You'll see with my quarterback and receiver selections, I went cheap quarterback with receiver to try to capitalize on the big weeks they put together. I can envision Jamar Chase being a top top 10 receiver this year. The issue is, if I'm wrong about Jamar Chase, then T. Higgins is a great pick. Tyler Boyd is a great pick. I think all three of them could have the potential, like the Steelers receivers, to finish inside the top 30, all three of them. And I think that, Ben is being a bit underdrafted. Joe Burrow is being criminally underdrafted where he's going at the moment. But I'm taking the chance that they went out and got Chase for a reason, and he is going to elevate himself right away in this offense, especially with his previous connection with Joe Burrow at LSU, that if he can just haul in a bunch of touchdowns, which he is kind of there to do, and lead this team in target share. It doesn't need to be a crazy target share. I'll take you to the projections right now that I have for Cincinnati. And you can see I had him at wide receiver number 5 overall when I spit out the projections. But what does that actually look like on paper? That gives him 25% of the market share in this offense, as opposed to 17 and 17 for Boyd, 28% of the touchdowns. Like, that's not crazy. At least I don't think that's crazy for Jamar Chase. It's not like I have Jamar Chase at 40% market share and the other two down at 10%. I have the belief that Jamar Chase is the best player of these guys, not taking anything away from Boyd and Higgins. As you can see, my projections still have them as 28 and 35 overall in PPR leagues, in half-point PPR leagues. It's just I boosted up the touchdowns, I boosted up the market share incrementally, and I made him wide receiver 6 for the season. So, like I said, I don't think that's nuts, and I think that pick number 54 is a good time to gamble on that. And like I said, the strategy that I have to take, and the reason that I took Mike Davis, is I need solid running backs, floor running backs, to fulfill that requirement in my lineups. At receiver, that's where I'm filling out all my flex spots with this 2-4 type system. So I'm shooting for upside as much as possible in this draft. So quarterbacks started going off the board here. The third tier of tight ends in my mind went here. Mark Andrews is still my preference, even though he collapsed at practice. That happened before Bob Harris made this pick. You can see on Tuesday, but apparently he's going to be okay. So I wouldn't worry too much about him. He is my favorite of these targets, and you can probably get him a little later than this now based on the recent news. So round 6, I take Raheem Mostert. Probably too early for him, but this is the spot where I was like, all right, let's hammer down on some running backs. I have some later wide receivers that I want to take, so let's try to see if we can get some floor running backs in here as well to, again, fulfill those spots. And maybe we get lucky and these guys end up being the starter. So round 6 goes T. Higgins, Juju, Jerry Jeudy, Kenny Golladay, Claypool, James Robinson. I don't like James Robinson. I do like Raheem Mostert, so I took him at pick number 67. Tyler Boyd, Travis Etienne, Robbie Anderson, Chase Edmonds, Trey Sermon, Michael Carter. Now we're into the 7th round. So that's the 6th round. Probably too high for Mostert, to tell you the truth, but I am higher on him. And, one of my big things in fantasy leagues is take the guys that you want. Don't take anyone because they're a perceived value, or don't wait around to be like, oh, like what happened with me and Harris in this draft. Now, I probably wasn't going to take him at 6th overall, and that was just more of a circumstance of where I ended up selecting in the first round. But I'm good with reaching. Reach for guys that you want. Like, this is your fantasy team. If you have a hunch on a guy, a gut feeling on a guy, make sure that you get that guy, even if it takes more than a round. And I have enough receivers to get myself by. Like, if I was to go back and do this again, I'd probably still take him here. Like, Debo is someone I really like, and he didn't go till just before my pick in the next round. I already had Chase. Maybe I could have paired up Higgins with him and just played the Cincinnati onslaught, as I have them projected for the most passing attempts of any team in the league. Like, that would have been a viable strategy for me as well. He didn't make it to me, so there's nothing I can really do about that at that point. So of the guys that went after me, did I really want any of them? No, like Debo would probably be the closest one, to be perfectly honest with you. In terms of my rankings and how I am approaching this season, Etienne would have been the closest, but I'm more wishy-washy on him. And as the strategy turned out in this draft, I need floor. And if Mostert's healthy, he's getting like 14 to 20 touches per game. That's going to be kind of it. He's never going to be a running back 1, regardless of who gets hurt on San Francisco. But if he is healthy, no matter how good Trey Sermon is, you're going to see Mostert touch the ball in a good running offense. And I did this before Trent Williams got hurt on their offensive line, but I think that he'll be back by week 1. At least that's the indication that he's just going to be a floor running back to fulfill that spot. Now we get into round 7. And I take Damian Harris at pick number 78. I like Harris a lot. Obviously, I did this Wednesday before the Patriots played in the Thursday night game. I have a video on that and on the podcast feed from Friday if you want to check out how I broke down that game. I still like Harris the best out of all those guys. And I don't think it matters whether it's Cam. Like, the way I kind of broke it down, just the kind of, you don't need to go back and tune in. The gist behind it is, if Cam is the quarterback, they're going to run a ton, probably more than any other team in the league. So his market share doesn't need to be as high, because Cam's going to be around like 25 to 35% per game on the ground. But they're going to run like 25 to 35% more per game than if Mac Jones was the quarterback. So a 50% market share or 49% market share of the rushes for Damian Harris with Cam is actually equivalent to 65% of the rushes if Mac Jones is the quarterback, which I would expect him to get as long as he's the goal line back. And we'll see him involved a little bit in the receiving game, like 2-3 targets per game. Nothing much, just be on the field. Then I think he's going to be completely fantasy viable. This is a gamble that he is the best running back on the Patriots. He is going to be the goal line back, and I'm committed to that. I had him last year, and he was good until he got hurt. He seems to be healthy this year, so pick number 78. Not terrible for me. That entire round goes Michael Carter, Michael Thomas, Antonio Brown, Debo, who I do like, Logan Thomas, Damian Harris, Corey Davis. I actually had my target for the next round. He went a pick after me. I like Corey Davis a lot. Cortland Sutton. I like Cortland Sutton a lot. I would have taken him or Davis in the next round if they were available. Obviously, they were not for me. Then we have Aaron Rodgers, Myles Gaskin, DJ Chark, Noah Fant. Didn't have a ton of interest in all those guys at that spot. Gaskin, maybe, but I had already kind of fulfilled what I wanted to do at running back. This decision actually came down at running back to Gaskin versus Harris for me, and the guy that I did my draft with, we were arguing about it back and forth. So that's just kind of the way the cookie crumbles from that. So round 8, the picks go Russell Wilson, Justin Herbert, Gallup, Brendan Cooks, who I love. Didn't get him. He was going to be my pick, but he went. Chenault, Henry Ruggs. I took Marvin Jones at number 91. James Conner, Mike Williams, Devontae Smith, who I love in this spot. That's a great pick for Steve Gallo at number 94. I thought people were going to sleep with him. Obviously, that didn't happen. You don't get everyone you want in every draft, but I love Marv, so I like Marv more than I like Smith, so I had to go out of my way to get him, but I like him almost as much, so that is a nice target, and the Hurts-Smith combo is just super cheap at this point because no one's taking Hurts anymore. Who's the rest of the picks here? Will Fuller and Mecole Hardman was the end of the 8th round. So I end up with Marv Jones. I've talked enough about Marvin Jones throughout the course of the year. I really wish that Brendan Cooks had made it to me, though. He went at pick number 88. It's a nice pick. Bob Harris's draft. I think Bob Harris had the best draft of anyone by far, at least through 10 rounds. That I wish I had his team. I don't have his team. Maybe his team will suck, and because I love it so much. If he did what I think that you should do, it's probably a bad sign for what his future prospects are. So maybe my team can elevate itself, and Bob's can be down a little bit. But I really like the look of his team on paper. Round number 9, we're going to start powering through these because now it starts getting a bit tricky, and these can be just so fluctuating draft to draft. Round 9 is Kenyon Drake, Dallas Goedert, Robert Tonyan, A.J. Dillon. A.J. Dillon I had queued up as my pick here. Jalen Waddle goes to Matthew Berry. Obviously, I don't get Dillon, so I then jump in on Joe Burrow at pick number 102. I need to pair him up with Jamar Chase, and I feel good about that scenario for me because I want to maximize my upside. If he's really good, then you know what? Joe Burrow is probably going to be pretty good. And like I mentioned, I do have him projected to lead the league in passing attempts, so that's only good news. After Burrow, Naheem Hines, Elijah Moore, Darnell Mooney, Jarvis Landry. Nice value on Jarvis Landry by Pat Fitzmaurice here. Curtis Samuel, then Zach Moss to Mike Clay. It's funny, Clay and I clash about this all the time. He takes all the guys I really hate, and I think I take all the guys that he really hates. I think we have the most polar opposite draft strategies possible. We even clash about Terry McLaurin's nickname. He says F1, which makes no fucking sense in the world because it's McLaren is the team name in F1 and his name isn't McLaren, it's McLaurin, so it's fucking stupid. Scoring McLaurin, like, come on, it's right there for you. And you know what? He scores, both in the football sense and the way that people used it in the 70s. I checked out his Instagram. He be scoring during the offseason. He'd be scoring on the field, too. Scoring McLaurin is where you want to be. Round number 10, as we keep powering through these right now, I take the Gus Bus, one of my favorite 10th to 15th round targets, depending on the size of your league. Overall, Pittman, Higbee, Melvin Gordon, Ronald Jones, Terrace Marshall. Looking better by the day. Jonnu Smith and his ankle sprain. Low ankle sprain, though, to Nando. I take the Gus Bus. I just think he's going to be he's a perfect type of running back for your head-to-head leagues, for bye weeks, because he's going to have sustained value each and every week. Both the guys I took in the next 2 rounds are running backs based on my strategy that I can play week to week in best ball, so I don't have to, quote unquote, have to play them, but they can most definitely have good weeks despite not being the starter on their teams because they're going to get enough run. But should anything happen to the starter, they're legit top 10 options at running back. So I can luck into an injury situation where both these guys could be my starting running back should anything happen to Alvin Kamara and or J.K. Dobbins, because I took Latavius Murray in the next round. I think I take Latavius Murray in every draft every year, and just for 3 weeks every single year, he's awesome. And that's really all the pick is for. Like, how good do you really think your 11th round pick is going to be? It's not going to be very good unless you get like the one diamond in the rough, and chances are you're not going to find that guy. So after Gus in the 10th, Hollywood Brown, Rondell Moore, Jalen Hurts finally goes. That's great value on Jalen Hurts. Alexander Madison at 119, Brashad Perriman at 120 to Ray Flowers. We'll scroll into round number 11. Tony Pollard is another one of my favorite targets from down here. He went to Ray Flowers at 121. T.Y. Hilton, Stafford, Trey Lance, Jamal Williams, Latavius Murray to me, Adam Troutman, Justin Fields, Russell Gage, Irv Smith Jr., Leonard Fournette, and Sticky Gesicki. It's a nice value on him, especially after his weekend with Tua. Weekends with Tua. It's going to be a new book that Mitch Albom writes. But for now, it's looking pretty good for Gesicki, although only Waddle played in that game. There was no Parker. There was no Fuller. Obviously no Fuller for week 1, and Waddle got banged up. So I don't know how much of a market share Gesicki's actually going to command on a week-to-week basis. I guess if none of those guys played, he'd be like the wide receiver 1. But I know those guys are super injury-prone all the time, but expect at least 2 of them to be playing a lot of the time. Tua looked on point, though. So did Zach Wilson, shockingly enough. And we saw in garbage time against the Bills how Justin Fields can accrue fantasy points once he gets into the game. I still think he's the Bears starter by week 2. They're going to feed Dalton to the Lions and the Rams in week 1, watch him get beat up, bring in Fields in the fourth quarter, then it's Fields' team. So I have no problem drafting Fields highly still. I think maximum week 4 is the chance that we see them. I think we see him by the end of week 1, starting in week 2. That would be my prognosis of the situation. Round number 12 is the last one that I'll go through in full. So we have Phillip Lindsay. I really love that pick. That was queued up to be our pick in that spot, but obviously that did not happen. He's moving up and up and up the depth charts. That's something I went over on Friday. If you want to tune into that show, is why I like Phillip Lindsay. Devontae Parker, Evan Ingram, Jared Cook, Ryan Tannehill, David Johnson, Trevor Lawrence to me to pair up with Marv Jones in a stack. Tom Brady. Brady fell really low in this draft, which I was surprised about. Devin Singletary, Deshaun Watson goes at 142 to Steve Gallo. Marquez Callaway, who was my pick for 3 rounds from now, ended up going to Adam Azer at pick number 143. I like Callaway a lot. He was a target for me. And Matt Ryan goes next. So the guys that I missed out on here, as you can see, that I wanted for my next pick, I ended up going Gabe Davis as my pick, but I really wanted Jacoby Myers and I really wanted Marquez Callaway. They were off the board. I also wanted Giovanni Bernard in that spot. So the 3 guys I had targeted for my pick at 150 ended up going out before they got to me. So that was a bummer. But I don't mind Gabe Davis. I think it's a good situation to be in, especially if he's playing. He has to beat out Beasley and or Sanders. But if he's starting on the outside, he can be really good. My next pick is Kirk Cousins. I wanted a third quarterback as a stabilization type player. If I have Burrow, I have Lawrence. I have faith in both those guys, but Cousins is going to give me 3 deliverable weeks in best ball per year. He always does that. And he's a pretty stabilizing force. After that, in pick number 174 in the 15th round, I took Sterling Shepard. There's just so many injuries on the Giants' offense. I don't know why Sterling Shepard is just being completely written off. When healthy, he's going to be on the field 100% of the time. So I thought that was a cheap way to get some access to the Giants' offense, which I really have none of. So I like that. Any standouts in here? No, yeah, you're taking Chuba Hubbard, so you're taking backups. Darius Slayton is another option as opposed to Sterling Shepard. I did not get a chance to draft him. Nico Collins, I like a lot. He went to Scott Fish, so he's another target that you could have late here. Traquan, all the buzz is on Callaway right now. You can see Rashad Bateman, because the injury, fell down. I think that he's a better best ball target than a season-long target. He's a watchless guy for season-long leagues just because of that injury. You can go pick him up after week 3 instead of wasting the spot on him. I took Cole Kmet in the 16th round as I needed someone who didn't have the same bye week as Travis Kelce to throw in, and out of everyone that was left, I like Kmet. Devontae Booker, Saquon's primary handcuff, went to me. John Brown in Vegas at 221. Who else would I have taken here? There's not. Cam Newton at pick number 203 is actually not bad. If he keeps the job, that means he's good. So he's going to score a ton of fantasy points. Kenneth Gainwell goes down here. So I went Bills D, Chiefs D with my next 2 picks because I want 3 defenses in this spot. And I haven't picked again yet. Who is my pre-selection draft made here? It's probably another defense if I had to get. Now I don't even know who it is. I'm not even logged into it. Anyway, so that's the draft review for me. So you can get a sense of what people are doing in drafts right now. You can see some of the mistakes I made. And it wasn't even really a mistake. It's just the faith that I thought that Harris, Mixon, or Ridley would fall to me in the second round. And when they didn't, it kind of blew up my draft a lot. Although I guess taking Ridley and taking Hopkins was exactly the same thing on how I had to shift my strategy, but not getting one of those running backs early. The one thing that I did not want to do was panic in that situation and then go grab guys. And you can say that maybe I did that with Mike Davis. However, I'm a bit higher on Mike Davis than the rest of the people seem to be. So I wasn't too concerned about Mike Davis in the third round or in the fourth round because I was able to get McLaurin in the third. So my receivers on paper, I think, are the best in this league just because I continue to double down. But it really factors into Jamar Chase being really good, Marvin Jones being really good. And I think that they can be, and they will be usable on a week-to-week basis. So you can see how drafts go off the rails, and you need to pivot strategies really quickly if that's going to be a part of it. So don't get yourself tied in to one draft strategy going forward. Anyway, that will do it for me on the Pat Mayo Experience. Please tune in every single day. I got the Tool Show coming out on Monday. We'll have more throughout the course of the week, and fantasy football picks and bets on Mayo Media Network. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and subscribe to that on the podcast feed as well. That will have more breakdowns. It'll be half and half. It'll be half actionable preseason betting and DraftKings information along with prizepicks.com. Use code MMN at prizepicks. If you deposit $100, you'll get $200 at prizepicks.com. So I highly suggest you do that. We've been winning money on PrizePicks so far. So you can watch those shows. Plus, we're going to have, top fives, like top 5 players to target, top 5, players to avoid as the back end of those shows. So it works for a DraftKings and season-long perspective if that is information you are into. I'll be doing giveaways at the PME on Twitter. So follow me over there. Rate and review the podcast, smash the like button, sub to the show, and runthesims.com/Mayo is where you can get access to all of the tools, all of the projections, and at /Mayo get you a discount. There is a free 7-day cancellation policy where you'll get a full refund if you don't like the tools, which I doubt you won't, because you will like those tools, all right? I'm Pat Mayo. Good luck. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!